WWII's most classified air mission, mysteries that rewrite the past. Explore the greatest intellectual rivalries and debates in history, the clashes of ideas that moved humanity forward through conflict, competition, and collaboration. But some conflicts are not fought in the hallowed halls of academia or the public square. They are waged in the shadows, in the silent, unforgiving darkness, where the only debate is between survival and oblivion, and the only thesis is written in the fleeting vapor trails of an aircraft that was never there. This is the story of one such conflict, a battle of wits and wills fought not with words, but with whispers and shadows. This is the story of the Phantom Squadron, and a mission so secret its existence was denied for half a century. The year is 1944. The world is holding its breath. In the balance hangs the fate of nations, the very idea of freedom. The Allied forces are gathering for the Great Invasion, the final push to liberate a continent from the iron grip of tyranny. But before the first boot can touch the sands of Normandy, a silent, secret war must be won. A war fought in the dead of night, in the skies over occupied France. A war of whispers, of clandestine drops, of men and women who dance with death in the moonless dark. This is the world of the 492nd Bombardment Group, better known by a name whispered only in the most secure of briefings, the Carpetbaggers. From the fog-shrouded airfield at Harrington, England, they fly missions of unparalleled peril, their B-24 Liberators painted a ghostly, glossy black, stripped of their defensive ball turrets to make way for a gaping hole into the abyss, the Joe Hole, through which agents and supplies are dropped into the waiting arms of the French resistance. They are the lifeline, the slender thread of hope for the Maquis, the partisan fighters who wage a desperate, brutal war in the shadows. Among the crews of the 492nd, one squadron is spoken of with a particular reverence, a mixture of awe and fear. They are the Phantoms. Their missions are the most dangerous, their targets the most critical. They fly deeper, lower, and with less support than any other unit. Their existence is a rumor, their successes are unrecorded, and their losses are mourned in silence. To be a phantom is to be a ghost before you've even left the ground. Our story begins not in the cockpit of a roaring Liberator, but in the quiet tension of a pre-dawn briefing room. The air thick with the smell of stale coffee, sweat, and the unspoken fear that hangs over every man. It is here that we meet Flight Officer James "Jimmy" Thompson, his face still boyish, his eyes a little too wide for the world he has been thrust into. At 21, he is a prodigy of a pilot, a natural with a feel for the aircraft that older, more experienced men envy. But he is green, untested in the crucible of a real mission. He has the skill, but does he have the steel? Across the room, leaning against the wall with an air of casual indifference that fools no one, is Captain William Bill Sterling. Sterling is everything Thompson is not. He is a veteran of the daylight bombing raids over Germany, his eyes holding the haunted, thousand-yard stare of a man who has seen too much. He is quiet, almost brooding, his movements economical, his words few. He was grounded after his 25th mission, his nerves supposedly shot. But the OSS, the Office of Strategic Services, the puppet masters of this shadow war, saw something else in him. They saw a man who had walked through hell and come out the other side, a man who understood the calculus of risk and loss. They made him a phantom. Sterling is to be Thompson's command pilot on his first Carpetbagger mission. The pairing is deliberate, a classic case of old-world experience mentoring new-world talent. But there is a friction between them, an unspoken tension. Thompson, with his youthful eagerness, sees Sterling as a relic, a man broken by the war. Sterling, in turn, looks at Thompson and sees a boy playing as a soldier, a boy who has yet to understand that in this war, courage is not enough. The briefing is delivered by a man known only as Mr. Black, a civilian from the OSS, his face as gray and nondescript as his name. The mission is codenamed Operation Nightingale. The objective, to drop a Hallyu agent, codenamed Nightingale, and a critical shipment of new advanced radio equipment into a heavily fortified area of the Vercors Massif, a rugged, mountainous region in southeastern France that has become a bastion of the resistance. The drop zone is a tiny, isolated plateau surrounded by German patrols. The flight path will take them through some of the most heavily defended airspaces in Europe. This is not a milk run, gentlemen, Mr. Black says, his voice a dry rasp. The Gestapo has been cracking down hard in the Verkos. They know something is coming. The resistance is on the verge of being wiped out. If this equipment doesn't get through, if Nightingale doesn't get on the ground, the entire network in that sector will collapse. The D-Day landings are weeks away. We need that network. The fate of thousands of lives, and perhaps the success of the invasion itself, depends on you. As the briefing concludes, the crew files out the weight of the mission settling upon them. Thompson feels a knot of excitement and fear tightening in his stomach. This is it. This, what he has trained for. He is finally a part of the real war. He glances at Sterling, expecting to see some sign of emotion, some flicker of the same adrenaline that is coursing through his own veins. But Sterling's face is a mask of stone. He simply pulls out a worn pipe, tamps it with a practiced thumb, and lights it, the small flame briefly illuminating the deep lines etched around his eyes. "Don't get cocky, kid," Sterling says, his voice low, the smoke curling around his words. "The sky over France doesn't care how good a pilot you are. It only cares about whether you make a mistake. And tonight, there's no room for mistakes." The crew of the Midnight Angel, their black B-24, is a collection of men as diverse as the states they call home. There is Sergeant Frank Miller, the navigator, a former math teacher from Ohio, his quiet demeanor belying a mind that can calculate drift and heading in the darkest of nights with uncanny accuracy. There is Sergeant Sullivan, the radio operator, a fast-talking kid from Brooklyn who can coax a signal out of the most battered of radios. And there is the Joe for this mission, the man they will drop from the belly of the beast. He is a Frenchman, his face a roadmap of scars, his eyes burning with a cold fire. He says nothing, his silence more intimidating than any threat. As they walk towards the waiting aircraft, the ground crew making their final checks, the air is thick with the smell of high-octane fuel and the damp English earth. The Midnight Angel stands like a black specter against the graying sky, its engines silent, waiting. Thompson runs a hand along its cold metal skin. He feels a connection to the machine, a sense of shared purpose. Tonight, they will fly into the heart of the enemy's territory. They will be ghosts in the machine of war. Sterling claps him on the shoulder, his grip surprisingly strong. "Just remember the training, kid. Fly the plane. Let me worry about the rest." The engines roar to life, one by one, a symphony of controlled power that vibrates through the very bones of the men inside. The Midnight Angel taxis to the runway, its black form all but invisible in the gathering gloom. Thompson takes controls, his hands steady, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. He looks over at Sterling, who gives him a curt nod. This is it, the moment of truth. With a final check of the instruments, Thompson pushes the throttles forward. The Liberator surges down the runway faster, the ground blurring beneath them. And then, with a gentle pull on the yoke, they are airborne, climbing into the night, leaving the relative safety of England behind. They are a phantom, a whisper on the wind, bound for the darkness of occupied France. The night is long, and the enemy is waiting. As the English coastline recedes into the blackness of the Channel, a profound silence descends upon the cockpit of the Midnight Angel. The roar of the 4 Pratt Whitney engines becomes a constant, a backdrop to the tense quiet of the men. Jimmy Thompson, his hands light on the controls, feels the aircraft as an extension of his own body. The B-24 is a heavy, unforgiving beast, but in the air it has a certain ponderous grace. He is flying, truly flying, and for a moment the fear is replaced by a pure, unadulterated thrill. Sterling sits beside him, a silent, watchful presence. He is not just a co-pilot. He is the mission commander, the final authority on every decision made in this flying metal tube. He scans the instruments, his gaze sweeping from the altimeter to the airspeed indicator, his mind a constant whirl of calculations. But his real focus is outside, on the inky blackness that surrounds them. He listens, not just with his ears, but with every fiber of his being, for the telltale signs of danger. The distant thrum of a night fighter's engine, the sudden, brilliant flash of anti-aircraft fire. "Stay at 5,000 until we make landfall," Sterling's voice cuts through the engine's drone. "The flak batteries along the coast are expecting us to come in lower. Let's not be predictable." Thompson nods, making a minute adjustment to the trim. He is learning that this shadow war is a game of deception, of outthinking an enemy who is constantly trying to outthink you. It is not about brute force, but about guile and cunning. In the navigator's compartment, Sergeant Miller is hunched over his charts, the dim glow of his gooseneck lamp illuminating a web of lines and figures. He is the one who will guide them through the treacherous maze of enemy territory. His calculations, the only thing standing between them, and a fatal navigational error. He works with a quiet, intense focus, his pencil a blur of motion. He is the unsung hero of these missions, the man who finds a needle in a haystack, in the dark, from 5,000 feet. Back in the radio room, Sully Sullivan is listening intently to the crackle and hiss of the ether. His job is to monitor the German frequencies, to listen for any sign that they have been detected. He is also the one who will operate the S-phone, the special radio that will allow them to communicate with the resistance on the ground. It is a temperamental piece of equipment, and a single misplaced signal could bring the entire German Air Force down upon them. And in the cold, cavernous fuselage, the French agent Nightingale sits alone, his face impassive. He is a man of mystery, a ghost even to the men who are risking their lives to deliver him. He is the package, the precious cargo, and his thoughts are his own. He is a man on his way to a war that is fought not with armies, but with whispers and daggers in the dark. The French coast appears as a faint, dark line on the horizon. "Here we go, kid," Sterling says, his voice tight. "Welcome to the party." As they cross into occupied airspace, the tension in the cockpit ratchets up a notch. Every shadow on the ground could be a hidden gun emplacement, every flicker of light a signal to the enemy. They are a lone black sheep in a sky full of wolves. Suddenly, the night is torn apart by a series of brilliant, blinding flashes. Searchlights. They erupt from the ground, their powerful beams stabbing at the darkness, searching, hunting. Thompson's knuckles are white on the controls. His instinct is to bank, to dive, to do anything to escape the light, but Sterling's voice is calm, steady. "Hold your course, Jimmy. Don't panic. They haven't got us yet." The beams of light sweep across the sky, crisscrossing, creating a deadly web. One of them catches the wing of the Midnight Angel, and for a heart-stopping moment, the black bomber is illuminated, a perfect target against the night sky. "Flak!" Sully's voice crackles over the intercom. "Heavy flak, 9 o'clock." The air around them erupts in a series of black puffs of smoke, each one a deadly explosion of shrapnel. The aircraft is rocked by the concussions, the metal groaning in protest. Thompson fights to keep the bomber level, his muscles straining. "Dive, Jimmy, dive!" Sterling roars. "Take us down to the deck." Thompson pushes the yoke forward, and the Midnight Angel plunges towards the earth. The ground rushes up to meet them, the searchlights and flak batteries flashing past in a terrifying blur. He pulls back on the yoke at the last possible second, leveling out just a few hundred feet above the French countryside. They are flying so low that he can see the individual trees, the dark shapes of the farmhouses. It is a terrifying, exhilarating ride. They have escaped the searchlights, but they are not out of danger. They are now in the realm of the night fighters, the German pilots who are the masters of this deadly game. Thompson's eyes are glued to the darkness ahead, his heart pounding in his chest. He's never felt so alive or so close to death. Sterling, however, seems almost calm. He has been here before. He knows this dance. He is a man who has made his peace with the possibility of death, and in doing so, has found a strange kind of freedom. "They'll be coming for us," he says, his voice a low growl. "They know we're here. Now the real fun begins." The next hour is a blur of terror and adrenaline. They are hunted relentlessly. A German Junkers Ju-88 night fighter, a twin-engine bird of prey, appears on their tail, its cannons spitting a deadly stream of tracer rounds. Thompson throws the heavy bomber into a series of violent, evasive maneuvers, his body screaming in protest the G-forces. The Ju-88 is a nimbler aircraft, and its pilot is skilled. He stays on them, his trackers stitching a deadly pattern across the sky. In the waist of the aircraft, the gunners, their positions now just empty, curtained windows, can do nothing but watch and pray. They are defenseless, their fate entirely in the hands of the two men in the cockpit. "I can't shake him," Thompson yells, his voice strained. "He's too fast." "Don't try to outrun him," Sterling says, his voice still impossibly calm. Outthink him. Take us into that cloud bank to the left. Thompson banks the bomber hard, the engines screaming in protest. They plunge into the thick, disorienting whiteness of the cloud. For a moment, they are blind, flying on instruments alone. The Ju-88, not wanting to risk a collision, is forced to break off the attack. They emerge from the cloud, and the night is once again empty. They have bought themselves a few precious moments of respite. But they are not safe. They are still deep in enemy territory, and the drop zone is still miles away. "Nice flying, kid," Sterling says, and for the first time, there is a hint of respect in his voice. "You might just make a Phantom yet." Thompson feels a surge of pride, but it is quickly tempered by the cold reality of their situation. They have survived their first encounter, but the night is far from over. Verko's Massif looms ahead, a dark, jagged silhouette against the star-dusted sky. It is a place of legends, a place of heroes and ghosts, and tonight, they are about to become a part of its story. The mountains of Verko's Massif rise up to meet them, a formidable wall of rock and shadow. This is the fortress of the Maquis, a natural citadel that has become a symbol of French defiance. But it is also a trap. The Germans have surrounded the plateau, their patrols a constant menacing presence. To fly into the Verkos is to fly into the jaws of the wolf. Sergeant Miller, his face bathed in the green glow of his instruments, gives them the final heading. "Drop zone in 5 minutes. It's a tight one, Captain. A real postage stamp. We'll manage," Sterling says, his voice grim. "We always do." They begin their descent, the bomber's engines throttled back to a low growl. They are flying at just a few hundred feet, the jagged peaks of the mountains reaching up to them like skeletal fingers. It is a feat of incredible skill and nerve, a testament to Thompson's raw talent as a pilot. But even he can feel the sweat trickling down his back. "I don't like this, Bill," he says, his voice a low murmur. "It's too quiet. Where are the patrols? Where are the guns?" "They're here," Sterling replies, his eyes scanning the darkness. "They're just waiting." Sully's voice crackles over the intercom. "I've got them. I've got the Eureka signal. It's faint, but it's there." This is the moment of truth. The Eureka is a portable transponder used by the resistance to guide the aircraft to the drop zone. But it is not foolproof. The Germans have captured Eureka devices before and have used them to lure Allied aircraft into deadly traps. "S-phone, Sully," Sterling orders. "Let's make sure we're talking to the right people." Sully switches to the S-phone, a special short-range radio that is almost impossible to intercept. He speaks a coded phrase into the microphone, a line of poetry that sounds like nonsense to the uninitiated. He waits, his face a mask of concentration. For a long, agonizing moment, there is only silence. And then, a voice, fainting and crackling with static, comes back with the correct response. It is the Maquis. They are waiting. "They're good," Sully says, a note of relief in his voice. "They're the real deal." "All right, Jimmy," Sterling says. "Take us in, and be ready for anything." Thompson guides the bomber towards the signal, his eyes straining to see the drop zone. It is a small, flat clearing, barely larger than the aircraft itself. The Maquis has lit 3 small fires in a triangle, the signal that the drop is clear. But as they get closer, Thompson sees something else. A flicker of movement in the trees at the edge of the clearing. "Bill, I see something," he says, his voice tight. "I think we've got company." Sterling raises a pair of night binoculars to his eyes. He scans the tree line, his jaw tightening. It's a trap. The Germans are here. They're waiting for us to make the drop. A cold dread washes over Thompson. They have flown right into the lion's den. The Maquis on the ground are either dead or captured. The Eureka signal and the S-phone response were both part of an intentionally designed falsehood, representing a deliberate act of deception. "What do we do?" Thompson asks, his voice barely whispers. Sterling is silent for a moment, his mind racing. They are low, slow, and vulnerable. To abort the drop now would be to admit defeat, to leave the resistance in the Verkos to their fate. But to make the drop would be to deliver Nightingale and the precious radio equipment directly into the hands of the enemy. It is an impossible choice. "We're not giving them Nightingale," Sterling says, his voice like ice. "And we're not giving them the satisfaction. We're going to give them a little something else instead." He turns to the intercom. "Sully, get on the horn to Harrington. Tell them Nightingale is compromised. Tell them we're initiating Plan B. Plan B." It is a last resort, a desperate gambling. It is a plan that has never been used before, a plan that exists only in the most classified of documents. It is a plan that will almost certainly get them all killed. And tell the Joe to get ready, Sterling adds, his voice grim. He's about to earn his pay. Nightingale, the silent Frenchman, stands up in the fuselage. He is no longer a passive passenger. He is a soldier, and he knows what he must do. He moves to the bomb bay, where the cargo containers are stored. But he is not interested in the radios. He is interested in the other containers, the ones marked with a special, almost invisible symbol. These containers do not hold supplies. They hold a new, highly volatile form of plastic explosive, enough to level a city block. It is a weapon of last resort, a scorched earth policy for a mission that has gone catastrophically wrong. "We're going to make a pass, Jimmy," Sterling says, his voice a low growl. A very low, very fast pass. "And when I give the word, we're going to turn this whole damn plateau into a funeral pyre." Thompson's blood runs cold. This is not a supply drop. This is a bombing run, a suicide run. He looks at Sterling, at the hard, determined set of his jaw, and he understands. This is what it means to be a phantom. It is not just about flying in the dark. It is about making the impossible choices, the ones that no one else is willing to make. He takes a deep breath, his hands steady on the controls. Let's do it. He pushes the throttles forward, and the Midnight Angel roars like a vengeful god. They scream across the plateau, just feet above the treetops. The German soldiers in the clearing look up, their faces a mixture of triumph and confusion. They are expecting a gentle, slow-moving target. They are not expecting this. "Now," Sterling yells. Nightingale pushes the containers out of the bomb bay. They fall, not with parachutes, but like stones tumbling end over end. They hit the ground, and for a moment, there is silence. And then the world explodes. A series of massive concussive blasts rips through the clearing, the force of the explosions so powerful that it throws the Midnight Angel into the air like a child's toy. The ground erupts in a maelstrom of fire and shrapnel. The German soldiers, the trucks, the trees, everything is vaporized in an instant. The shockwave hits the bomber, and the aircraft is thrown onto its side. Alarms scream in the cockpit. Thompson fights for control, his muscles straining against the G-forces. He can feel the aircraft tearing itself apart. One of the engines is on fire, trailing a long plume of black smoke. "We're hit!" Sully yells over the intercom. "We're going down." Thompson knows it's true. The controls are sluggish and unresponsive. The bomber is losing altitude fast. They are a wounded bird falling from the sky. "Bail out!" Sterling roars. "Everybody out now!" Sully and Miller scramble for the escape hatch. But Nightingale, the silent Frenchman, makes no move to leave. He stands in the fuselage, a grim smile on his face. He has completed his mission. He has delivered his message. He is a ghost, and he is ready to meet his fate. In the cockpit, Thompson is still fighting. He can't abandon the aircraft, not while there is still a chance. But Sterling grabs him with the shoulder, his grip like a vice. "Let her go, Jimmy," he says, his voice surprisingly gentle. "You did good. Now it's time to go." He shoves Thompson towards the escape hatch. Thompson hesitates, his eyes meeting Sterling's. In that moment, he sees not a broken old man, but a hero, a man who has given everything for a cause he believes in. Sterling gives him a final grim smile. "See you on the other side, kid." And then he turns back to the controls, his hands steady, as he guides the dying bomber away from the populated areas below, towards the empty, unforgiving peaks of the mountains. He is a captain, and he will go down with his ship. Thompson tumbles out of the escape hatch, the wind tearing at him. He pulls the ripcord, and his parachute blossoms above him, a single white flower in the fiery night. He watches as the Midnight Angel, his first and last command, plunges into the side of a mountain, the explosion a final, defiant roar. And then there is only silence and the cold, lonely darkness of the French night. He is alone, a ghost in a hostile land, with the echoes of the explosion still ringing in his ears. The mission is over. But for Jimmy Thompson, the war has just begun. The silence that follows the crash is a living thing, a heavy, oppressive blanket that smothers the night. Jimmy Thompson hangs in his parachute harness, a puppet on a string, drifting slowly towards the dark, unforgiving earth. The fire on the mountainside, the funeral pyre of the Midnight Angel and its captain, is a distant, flickering candle in the vastness of the Virkos. The reality of what has just happened crashes down on him with the force of a physical blow. Sterling is gone. Nightingale is gone. The crew, his crew, is scattered, their fates unknown. He is alone. He lands hard, the impact jarring his bones, his parachute collapsing around him in a tangle of silk and cord. He lies there for a moment, the cold, damp ground, a shocking contrast to the fiery chaos of the sky. He is alive. The thought is a small, fragile spark in the overwhelming darkness of his despair. He has to move. The Germans will be coming. The explosion will have alerted every patrol in a 50-mile radius. He struggles out of his harness, his hands fumbling with the buckles. He is trained for this, for survival, evasion, and escape. But the training is a distant, academic thing. The reality is cold, brutal, and terrifying. He has a compass, a knife, a few bars of concentrated chocolate, and a silk map of France. It is not much to go on. He buries his parachute as best he can, covering it with leaves and branches. It is a futile gesture, he knows. The Germans will find the crash site. They will find their bodies. They will find his parachute. But he must do something. He must cling to the illusion of control, however small. He starts to move, his body aching, his mind a numb fog of shock and grief. He has no destination, no plan. He just knows that he must put as much distance as possible between himself and the crash site. He stumbles through the dense forest, the branches tearing at his clothes, the darkness a disorienting, claustrophobic presence. Every snap of a twig, every rustle of leaves sends a jolt of fear through him. The enemy is everywhere. He walks for hours, his body on autopilot, his mind replaying the final, terrible moments in the cockpit. Sterling's last words, his grim, determined smile. The captain who went down with his ship. A hero. And what am I? Thompson thinks, a wave of self-loathing washing over him. A coward who ran away. A boy who was not ready for a man's war. As the first faint hints of dawn begin to lighten the eastern sky, he finds a small, hidden cave, a shallow indentation in the rock face. He crawls inside, his body trembling with exhaustion and cold. He is a ghost, a phantom in a land of ghosts. He has no name, no past, no future. He is just a survivor, and for now, that is all that matters. He must have slept a fitful, dream-haunted sleep, because when he opens his eyes, the sun is high in the sky. He is stiff, sore, and ravenously hungry. He eats a small piece of his chocolate, the sweetness of a small, fleeting comfort in his misery. He knows he cannot stay here. He has to find help. He must find the resistance. But how? Virkos is a vast, wild place. The Maquis are a shadow army, their locations a closely guarded secret. To simply wander through the forest, hoping to stumble upon them, is to invite capture or death. He needs a plan. He needs to think like Sterling would have thought. What would Sterling have done? He remembers the briefing, the maps, the coded phrases. He remembers the name of a village, a small, insignificant hamlet on the edge of the plateau. It was mentioned as a possible emergency contact point, a place where a downed airman might find a friendly face. It is a long shot, a desperate gamble, but it is the only gambling he has. He spends the day hiding in the cave, watching, listening. He sees German patrols moving through the forest, their dogs straining at their leashes. He hears the distant sound of trucks, the guttural shouts of the soldiers. They are hunting for him. They are closing in. As darkness falls, he sets out again. His compass is his only guide. He moves slowly, cautiously, every sense on high alert. The night is his ally, his only friend in this hostile world. He is a creature of shadows, a phantom moving through a land of phantoms. He travels for 2 nights, hiding during the day, his body pushed to the limits of its endurance. He is weak from hunger, his uniform in tatters, his face a mask of dirt and scratches. He is no longer the boyish, eager pilot who left England just a few days ago. He is a hunted animal, a survivor who has looked into the abyss and seen his own mortality reflected at him. On the 3rd night, he sees it. A cluster of faint lights nestled in a valley below. The village. His heart leaps with a mixture of hope and fear. Is this salvation or another trap? He has no way of knowing. He must trust. He must take the leap of faith. He approaches the village with extreme caution, circling it, watching for any sign of a German presence. He sees none. The village seems to be asleep, a peaceful, slumbering island in a sea of war. He finds the church, its steeple, a dark finger pointing at the sky. This is the contact point. He is supposed to knock on the priest's door, to speak a coded phrase. But what if the priest has been captured? What if he is a collaborator? He hesitates, his hand hovering over the heavy wooden door. This is the moment of truth, the moment where his fate will be decided. He takes a deep breath and knocks. The door creaks open, and a man stands there, his face shrouded in shadow. He is old, his hair white, his eyes holding a deep, weary sadness. It is the priest. "I am a friend of the man who watches the birds," Thompson whispers, the coded phrase feeling clumsy and foolish on his tongue. The priest looks at him, his eyes searching Thompson's face. For a long, agonizing moment, he says nothing, and then he nods, a slow, almost imperceptible movement. "The birds have been singing a sad song tonight," he replies, his voice a low, mournful whisper. "Come in, my son. You are safe now." Thompson stumbles into the small, sparsely furnished room, the warmth of the fire a shocking, welcome embrace. The priest gives him a bowl of hot soup, and he devours it like a starving animal. He has not tasted real food in days. It is the most delicious thing he has ever eaten. "We heard the explosion," the priest says, his voice heavy with sorrow. "We saw the fire on the mountain. We knew it was one of ours." "There were others," Thompson says, his voice cracking. "My crew, did any of them?" The priest shakes his head slowly. "The Germans found the crash site this morning. There were no survivors, except you." The words are a hammer blow, a final, brutal confirmation of what he already knew in his heart. They are all gone. Sterling, Sully, Miller, all of them. He is the only one left. Guilt is a physical weight, a crushing burden that threatens to suffocate him. "It was my fault," he whispers, the tears finally coming hot and bitter. "I was the pilot. I should have saved them." "You saved the mission," a new voice says, sharp and clear. A woman emerges from the shadows, her face young but her eyes old as the mountains themselves. She is dressed in the rough, practical clothes of a peasant, but she carries herself with an air of authority. "You did what had to be done. You denied the enemy a great prize. You honored the sacrifice of your captain." She is the leader of the local Maquis group, a woman known only as John. She is a legend in the Vercos, a fierce, intelligent leader who has outwitted the Germans time and time again. She is the one who was supposed to meet them at the drop zone. "We were on our way," she says, her voice tight with anger. "We were delayed by a German patrol. By the time we got there, it was too late. The Germans had sprung their trap. We saw the whole thing. We saw what you did. It was a brave thing, a terrible thing, but it was the right thing." Thompson looks at her, at the fierce conviction in her eyes, and he feels a small flicker of something he has not felt in days. Not hope, not yet, but something like it. A sense of purpose, a reason to go on. "What happens now?" he asks. "Now you rest," John says. "You eat, you regain your strength. And then we will see. The war is not over, for you or for us. You are a phantom, and we have need of phantoms in the Vercos." He stays in the small, hidden room behind the church for a week, his body slowly healing, his mind still a turmoil of grief and guilt. He learns more about the Shadow War, about the brutal, day-to-day reality of life in the Resistance. He sees the courage of these ordinary men and women who risk everything for a cause they believe in. He sees the cost of that courage in the faces of the widows, the orphans, the ones who have lost everything. He also learns that the Germans are still hunting for him. They know a crew member survived the crash. They have put a prize on his head. He is a ghost, but a ghost with a bounty. One night, Jean comes to him. "It is time for you to leave," she says. "It is not safe for you here anymore. We have arranged for a guide to take you to the Swiss border. From there, you can make your way back to England." Thompson is torn. A part of him, the part that is still the scared young pilot, wants to go. He wants to go home, to leave this nightmare behind. But another part of him, a part that he's only just beginning to discover, wants to stay. He looks at Jean, at the fierce determination in her eyes, and he sees a reflection of Sterling, of the man who chose to fight to the very end. "I'm not going," he says, his voice quiet but firm. "I'm not running away. Not again." Jean looks at him, a slow smile spreading across her face. "I was hoping you would say that." "I'm a pilot," he says. "I don't know how to fight on the ground." "You will learn," she says. "We will teach you. You know the enemy's tactics. You know they're machines. You can be of great use to us." And so Jimmy Thompson, the boy pilot, the sole survivor of the Midnight Angel, makes a choice. He chooses to stay. He chooses to fight. He sheds his identity as an American airman and becomes something else. He becomes a Maquisard. He becomes a ghost in the mountains, a phantom fighting a secret war in the heart of enemy territory. He learns to live off the land, to move like a shadow, to kill without hesitation. He learns the art of sabotage, of ambush, of deception. He uses his knowledge of aircraft to help the resistance plan attacks on German airfields and supply lines. He becomes a valuable asset, a weapon forged in the crucible of loss and survival. He never forgets the men he lost. He carries their memory with him, a constant, aching presence. But he is no longer consumed by guilt. He is driven by a new purpose. He is fighting for them, for Sterling, for Nightingale, for all the ghosts of Vercos. He is their legacy. He is their vengeance. Months passed. The seasons turn. The war rages on. The Allied forces land in Normandy, and the liberation of France begins. The fighting in the Vercos becomes even more brutal as the Germans, in their desperation, try to crush the resistance once and for all. Thompson, now known only as American, the American, becomes a leader in his own right. He is no longer the boy who was afraid of the dark. He is a man who has embraced it, who has made it his own. He is a phantom, a legend whispered in the mountains, a symbol of hope for the oppressed and terror to the enemy. One day, a new agent is dropped into the Vercos, a man from the OSS, the same organization that sent him on his fateful mission. The agent brings news and a new set of orders. He also brings a small personal package for Thompson. It is from Mr. Black, the gray, nondescript man from the briefing room. Inside the package is a single tarnished silver pipe. It is Sterling's pipe. With it is a note written in Mr. Black's neat, precise hand. "He would have been proud of you," the note says. "We all are. Welcome to the Phantoms." Thompson holds the pipe in his hand, the cold metal a tangible link to the man who saved his life, the man who taught him what it means to be a soldier. And for the first time since that terrible night, he allows himself to feel not just grief, but pride. He is a phantom, and the war is not over yet. As the tide of the war turns and the Allied armies sweep across France, the fighting in the Vercos reaches a fever pitch. The Germans, desperate and cornered, lash out with a savage brutality. They are determined to make an example of the Vercos, to crush this symbol of French resistance once and for all. For Jimmy Thompson, now a seasoned and respected leader among the Maquis, the final, most desperate chapter of his war is about to begin. He is no longer the fresh-faced boy who fell from the sky. The mountains have carved new lines on his face, and his eyes hold wisdom and a weariness far beyond his years. He has learned the harsh, unforgiving language of guerrilla warfare. He knows hunger, cold, and the constant gnawing fear of betrayal. But he also knew the fierce, unbreakable bonds of comradeship, the quiet courage of ordinary people rising to extraordinary heights. He has become one of them. He is American, the ghost of the mountains, a legend whispered around campfires and in the hushed tones of secret meetings. He has led raids, blown up bridges, and ambushed German convoys. He has used his pilot's knowledge of terrain and timing to devastating effects. He is a phantom, a whisper of death to the occupiers. But his greatest test is yet to come. The Germans have launched a massive offensive against the Vercos, pouring thousands of troops into the region, supported by artillery and air power. They are closing the net, tightening the noose around the neck of the resistance. The Maquis are outnumbered, outgunned, and running out of time. Jean, her face grim, gathers her small band of fighters in a hidden cave, the same cave where Thompson first found refuge. "They are coming for us," she says, her voice low and steady. "They mean to wipe us out. We cannot fight them head on. We must be smarter. We must be ghosts." Their only hope is to disrupt the German command structure, to sow chaos and confusion in their ranks. And to do that, they need information. They need to know the Germans' plans, their troop movements, their objectives. They need a man on the inside. And they have one, a high-ranking German officer, a colonel who has grown disillusioned with the Nazi regime, has been secretly feeding them information. He is their most valuable asset, their lifeline. But he has gone silent. They have not heard from him in a week. They fear he has been discovered, or that he has lost his nerve. "We have to get to him," Jean says. We have to know what he knows. It is our only chance. The colonel is stationed in a heavily fortified chateau, the regional headquarters of the Gestapo. It is a fortress, a place of terror and death. To get inside is suicide. To get out again is impossible. I'll go, Thompson says, his voice quiet but firm. The words are out of his mouth before he has even had a chance to think them through. But he knows it must be him. He is the outsider, the one they will least expect. And he is a phantom. This is what phantoms do. Jean looks at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of pride and fear. It is too dangerous, Jimmy. You are too valuable to us. I am a soldier, he replies, his voice echoing Sterling's words from a lifetime ago. This is my fight. Let me do this. And so a desperate, audacious plan is hatched. Thompson will pose as a captured Allied airman, a prize to be interrogated by the Gestapo. It is terrifying gambling. He will be walking into the lion's den with only his wits and his courage to protect him. He will have to rely on the colonel to recognize him, to find a way to pass on to him the information they so desperately need. He is given a new, clean uniform, a stark contrast to the rags he has been wearing for months. He is given a new identity, a new history. He is no longer Jimmy Thompson, the boy pilot. He is Captain Thomas, a veteran of the 8th Air Force, a man who has been shot down and captured. He is a role, a fiction, a ghost in a new machine. He allows himself to be captured by a German patrol, a carefully staged event that is all too real in its brutality. He is beaten, bound, and thrown into the back of a truck. He is on his way to the chateau, to the heart of the enemy's power. As he is dragged through the gates of the chateau, a cold, oppressive dread settles over him. This is a place of suffering, a place where hope dies. The air is thick with the smell of fear and disinfectants. He is taken to a small, windowless cell in the basement, the heavy, iron door clanging shut behind him with a sound of finality. He is left alone for hours, the darkness and the silence a form of torture in themselves. He tries to keep his mind focused, to go over the plan, to remember the coded phrases, the signals, the names, but fear is a living thing, a cold, slimy creature that wraps itself around his heart. He thinks of Sterling, of the quiet courage of the man who faced death with a calm resolve. He holds on to that memory, a talisman against the encroaching darkness. Finally, the door opens. A Gestapo officer stands there, his face a mask of cruel arrogance. He is a man who enjoys his work. The colonel will see you now, he says, a sneer on his lips. He is very interested in what you have to say. Thompson is taken to a large, opulent office, the walls lined with books and maps. The colonel is sitting behind a large mahogany desk, his back to the door. He is a tall, imposing man, his uniform immaculate, his silver hair neatly combed. He turns, and Thompson's blood runs cold. It is not the man he was expecting. It is a stranger, his eyes as cold and hard as chips of ice. So, the colonel says, his voice a low, cultured purr, the famous American pilot. We have been looking for you for a long time. It is a trap. The real colonel is gone, either dead or captured. This man is his replacement, a man sent to clean up the Verkos, to crush the resistance once and for all. And Thompson has just walked right into his hands. The next few hours are a blur of pain and terror. He is interrogated, relentlessly. They want to know everything. The names of the resistance fighters, their locations, their plans. They use every method at their disposal, from psychological torture to brutal, physical violence. But Thompson says nothing. He clings to his fictional identity, to the story he has so carefully constructed. He is Captain Thomas, and he knows nothing. He is beaten, but he does not break. He is a phantom. He has been forged in the fire of a burning bomber, in the cold, lonely darkness of the mountains. He has seen the face of death, and he is not afraid. As he lies on the cold stone floor of his cell, his body is a symphony of pain. He knows that he is going to die. He has failed. The resistance will be crushed. Jean, the priest, all the brave men and women he has come to call his family, they will all be killed. And it will be his fault. But then he hears it. A faint, rhythmic tapping. It comes from the pipes that run along the ceiling of his cell. It is Morse code. It is a message. Courage. The message taps out. The night is darkest just before the dawn. It is the colonel, the real colonel. He is here in this very building, a prisoner in his own headquarters. He is alive, and he has not given up hope. Thompson's heart soars. It is a desperate, fragile hope, but it is enough. He is not alone. The fight is not over. He taps back a reply, his knuckles raw and bleeding. The eagle is in the nest. The chicks are hungry. It is a coded phrase, a signal that he is ready to receive the information. The colonel begins to tap out his message, a long, complex stream of information. The Germans' entire battle plan. The troop movements, the artillery positions, the timing of the final assault. It is the key to their survival, the weapon that can turn the tide of the battle. Thompson memorizes it all, his mind a sharp, focused instrument. He is no longer a pilot or a soldier. He is a vessel, a conductor for the information that will save them all. He knows that he will never get out of this chateau alive. But the information will. He must find a way to get it to Jean. He has one last desperate card to play. He knows that the Gestapo officer who interrogated him is a vain, arrogant man, a man who believes in his own invincibility. He also knows that the officer is a heavy smoker and that he is careless with his cigarettes. Thompson begins to shout, to scream, to create a disturbance. He is a madman, a cornered animal. The guards come running. The Gestapo officer, annoyed by the noise, comes to his cell. "You are a noisy one, aren't you?" he says, a cruel smile on his face. "Perhaps we have not been persuasive enough." As the officer leans in to taunt him, Thompson lunges. He is weak, but he is desperate. He grabs the officer's arm, and with a strength born of pure adrenaline, he pulls him into the cell. He grabs the lit cigarette from the officer's hand and shoves it into the straw mattress on his bunk. The straw, dry as tinder, ignites instantly. The cell is filled with thick, acrid smoke. The alarms begin to scream. The chateau is thrown into chaos. In the confusion, Thompson makes his move. He is a phantom, a creature of smoke and shadows. He slips out of the cell, his body a raw nerve of pain. He must get to the roof. He has to send a signal. He fights his way through the burning, chaotic building, a ghost in the machine of its destruction. He is shot, a searing pain in his side, but he does not stop. He is driven by a force greater than himself, by the memory of the men he lost, by the hope of the men and women he is trying to save. He reaches the roof. The cold night air shocks his lungs. The chateau is a blazing torch below him. He has done it. He has created diversion. He finds what he is looking for. A signal lamp used to communicate with the guards in the watchtowers. He begins to flash a message, a simple, repeating pattern. It is the signal that the eagle has flown, that the information is on its way. He knows that Jean and her fighters are out there, in the darkness, watching, waiting. They will see the signal. They will know what to do. As he sends his final message, he sees them. The German soldiers, their figures silhouetted against the flames. They are coming for him. He is out of time. He is out of strength. He has given everything he has. He thinks of Sterling, of his final defiant act. He thinks of the pipe, the symbol of his belonging to a brotherhood of ghosts. He has lived up to that legacy. He has become a true phantom. He turns to face the approaching soldiers, a grim, bloody smile on his face. He is not afraid. He is a pilot, and he is flying home. The dawn is breaking over Vercors, the first rays of sun painting the snow-capped peaks in hues of rose and gold. The chateau is a smoking, blackened ruin, a monument to a night of fire and courage. The battle for Vercors is over. The German offensive has been broken. The resistance has survived. Jean stands on a ridge overlooking the valley, her face etched with a mixture of sorrow and triumph. She holds a pair of binoculars to her eyes, watching the last of the German trucks retreating in disarray. They had the Germans' battle plan. They knew where to strike, when to ambush, how to turn the enemy's strength into a weakness. They fought like demons, like ghosts, and they won an impossible victory. But the cost was high, so high. She lowers the binoculars, her eyes turning to the ruined chateau. She saw the signal. She saw the lone figure on the roof, a phantom against the flames. She saw him fall. American. Jimmy, the boy who fell from the sky and became a legend. He saved them. His final, desperate act of sacrifice gave them the time they needed, the chance they needed. He was the spark that lit the fire of their victory. Weeks later, as the Allied armies complete the liberation of France, a small, unmarked plane lands in a hidden field in the Vercors. A man in a gray suit steps out. It is Black from the OSS. He has come to collect his ghosts. He meets John in the small church, the same church where she first met the boy pilot. He has a file in his hand, a file stamped with the words, top secret. We are officially closing the book on Operation Nightingale, he says, his voice devoid of emotion. All records will be sealed. The 492nd Bombardment Group will be disbanded. The Phantom Squadron never existed. And what about him? Jean asks, her voice tight. What about the boy you sent to us? Does he get a medal? Does his family get to know how he died? Black shakes his head slowly. He was a phantom. His name will not be on any memorial. His story will never be told. It is the price of the war we fight, the war in the shadows. He hands her a small, sealed package. This was found on his body. We thought you should have it. Jean opens the package. Inside is a single tarnished silver pipe. Sterling pipe, the symbol of a brotherhood of ghosts. She clutches it in her hand, the cold metal a final tangible link to the boy who became a hero. He was more than a phantom, she says, her voice a fierce, proud whisper. He was one of us. He was the son of Virkos, and we will not forget him. And they don't. In the years that follow, as France rebuilds itself from the ashes of the war, the story of American is passed down, a local legend, a whispered tale of a ghost who fought for their freedom. His name is not written in any history book, but it is carved into the heart of the mountains he came to call home. And so the story of the Phantom Squadron, of the Midnight Angel, of a boy named Jimmy Thompson who fell from the sky and learned to fly again, is consigned to the shadows, a secret locked away in the classified archives of a forgotten war. It is a story of courage, of sacrifice, of the extraordinary things that ordinary people are capable of when faced with the darkest of times. It is a story that was never supposed to be told, but some stories, like some ghosts, refuse to stay buried. If this story has awakened something in you, if it has resonated with the truth in your own heart, then our journey together has just begun. Subscribe to this channel. Join us as we continue to explore the hidden corners of history, the untold stories of the men and women who shaped our world. For the past is never truly past. It is a living, breathing thing, a collection of whispers and echoes waiting for those who are willing to listen. And we are listening. We are the keepers of ghosts, and we have so many more stories to tell. The years pass, the world moves on. The Great War becomes history, then memory, then myth. The men and women who fought it grow old, their numbers dwindling with each passing year. The secrets they carried, the stories they could not tell, are buried with them, one by one. The classified files remain sealed, gathering dust in the forgotten corners of government archives. The Phantom Squadron is a footnote in a footnote, a whisper of a whisper, a ghost story told by ghosts. But in a small village in the Virkos, in the shadow of the mountains that have seen so much blood and courage, the memory endures. The old priest, his hair now snow-white, his body bent with age, still tends to his small flock. He still remembers the night the boy fell from the sky, the night the fire burned on the mountain. He remembers the courage of all American, the ghost who became a son of France. And in a small, private ceremony, held each year on the anniversary of that terrible night, the villagers gather. They light candles, they speak the names of the fallen. They tell the story of the Phantom Squadron, not as history, but as a living testament to the power of the human spirit. They remember, and in remembering, they keep the ghosts alive. Across the Atlantic, in a small town in America, an old woman sits on her porch, watching the sun set over the fields. Her name is Margaret Thompson. She is the sister of Jimmy Thompson, the boy pilot who never came home. She received a telegram so many years ago, informing her that her brother was missing in action, presumed dead. There was no body, no grave, no closure, just a gaping hole in her heart that never quite healed. She has spent a lifetime wondering what happened to him. Did he suffer? Was he alone? Did he know that she loved him, that she was proud of him? The questions are a constant, aching presence, a burden she has carried for decades. One day, a package arrives. It is from France, from a small village she has never heard of. Inside is a letter, written in careful, formal English and a small, tarnished silver pipe. The letter is from Jean, the leader of the Maquis, now an old woman herself. The letter tells the story, the whole story, the story of the Midnight Angel, of the mission that went wrong, of the boy who fell from the sky and became a hero. It tells of his courage, his sacrifice, his final, desperate act that saved so many lives. It tells of how he is remembered, how he is honored, how he is loved. Margaret reads the letter, the tears streaming down her face. She holds the pipe in her hands, the cold metal, a tangible link to the brother she lost so long ago. And for the first time in decades, she feels a sense of peace. He was not alone. He was not forgotten. He was a hero. He was a phantom. She writes back to Jean a simple, heartfelt letter of thanks. She tells her that she will treasure the pipe, that she will keep the story alive, that she will tell it to her children and her grandchildren. She tells her that she is grateful, more grateful than words can express, for the gift of knowing the truth. And so the story of the Phantom Squadron, of the boy named Jimmy Thompson, is passed down from generation to generation, a testament to the courage and sacrifice of those who fought in the shadows. It is a story that was never supposed to be told, but it is a story that must be told, because it is a story about the very best of us, about the capacity for ordinary people to do extraordinary things when faced with the darkest of times. The world has changed. The technology of war has advanced beyond the wildest dreams of those who flew the Black Liberators over occupied France. But the fundamental truths remain the same. The struggle between freedom and tyranny, between courage and fear, between hope and despair, these are the eternal conflicts of the human condition. And in every generation, there are those who are called to stand in the breach, to fight the good fight, to be the ghosts in the machine. The story of the Phantom Squadron is not just a story about the past. It is a story about the present and the future. It is a reminder that the price of freedom is eternal vigilance, that the fight against tyranny is never truly over, and that the courage of a few can change the fate of many. It is a story about the power of sacrifice, about the willingness to give everything for a cause greater than oneself. It is a story about the bonds of brotherhood, about the fierce loyalty that binds men and women together in the face of unimaginable danger. It is a story about the resilience of the human spirit, about the capacity to endure suffering, to overcome loss, and to find hope in the darkest of places. And it is a story about ghosts, the ghosts of the men and women who fought and died in the shadows, whose names are not written in the history books, whose sacrifices are not commemorated with monuments and medals. They are the silent heroes, the unsung warriors, the phantoms who haunt the margins of history. But they are not forgotten, not by those who knew them, not by those who carry their memory, and not by those who are willing to listen to the whispers of the past. In the modern world, the concept of a phantom squadron might seem like a relic of a bygone era. But the need for such units, for men and women who are willing to operate in the shadows, to take on the missions that no one else can or will, that need has never been greater. The threats we face today are different, but they are no less real, no less dangerous. And the need for courage, for sacrifice, for the willingness to stand in the breach, that need is eternal. The story of Jimmy Thompson is a story of transformation. He begins as a boy, eager and naive, full of dreams and aspirations. He is thrust into a world of unimaginable horror, a world where death is a constant companion, where the line between right and wrong is blurred, where the only certainty is uncertainty. He is broken, shattered by the loss of his crew, by the weight of his own perceived failures. But he does not stay broken. He rises from the ashes, forged in the fire of his suffering, tempered by the courage of those around him. He becomes something more than he was. He becomes a phantom. His journey is a testament to the power of the human spirit to overcome adversity, to find meaning in suffering, to transform pain into purpose. He learns that courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act in spite of it. He learns that heroism is not about grand gestures, but about the small, daily acts of defiance, the quiet determination to keep fighting, to keep hoping, to keep believing. He learns that true strength is not found in physical power, but in the resilience of the soul. The story of Bill Sterling is a story of redemption. He is a man who has been broken by the war, who has seen too much, who has lost too much. He is grounded, deemed unfit for duty, a relic of a brutal past. But the OSS sees something in him, a spark of something that has not been extinguished. They give him a second chance, a chance to prove himself, a chance to find meaning in the chaos. He becomes a phantom, a leader, a mentor. He guides Jimmy Thompson through the darkness, teaching him the hard lessons of survival, the brutal calculus of war. And in his final act, he chooses to sacrifice himself to save his crew to go down with his ship. He is a captain, and he dies like a captain. He is a hero, and he is remembered as a hero. His story is a reminder that it is never too late to find redemption, that even the most broken of souls can find a way to heal, to contribute, to make a difference. It is a story about the power of second chances, about the importance of believing in people, even when they have lost faith in themselves. It is a story about the enduring power of duty, of honor, of the willingness to put the needs of others before one's own. The story of Jean is a story of resistance. She is a woman in a man's world, a leader in a time when women were expected to be silent and subservient. But she is neither silent nor subservient. She is fierce, intelligent, and utterly fearless. She leads her band of Maquisards with a combination of cunning and courage, outwitting the Germans time and time again. She is a symbol of hope for the oppressed, a terror to the enemy. She is a warrior, and she fights with passion and conviction that is both inspiring and humbling. Her story is a reminder that courage knows no gender, that leadership is not about physical strength, but about the strength of character. It is a story about the power of ordinary people to rise to extraordinary heights, to defy tyranny, to fight for their freedom. It is a story about the importance of resistance, of never giving up, of never surrendering to the forces of darkness. It is a story that resonates across the ages, a timeless testament to the indomitable spirit of humanity. The story of the Maquis is a story of collective courage. They are not professional soldiers. They are farmers, teachers, shopkeepers, ordinary men and women who have been thrust into an extraordinary situation. They have no formal training, no sophisticated weapons, no air support. They have only their courage, their determination, and their love of freedom. They fight a brutal, desperate war against a vastly superior enemy. They suffer terrible losses. They endure unimaginable hardships, but they never give up. They never surrender. They are the backbone of resistance, the heart and soul of the fight for liberation. Their story is a reminder that the fight for freedom is not the exclusive domain of professional soldiers. It is the responsibility of every citizen, of every man and woman who believes in the principles of liberty and justice. It is a story about the power of collective action, about the importance of standing together, of supporting one another, of never losing hope. It is a story that should inspire us all to be more engaged, more active, more willing to stand up for what we believe in. The story of the OSS is a story of innovation and daring. They are the forerunners of the modern intelligence community, the pioneers of covert operations. They are the ones who think outside the box, who are willing to take risks, who are not afraid to challenge the status quo. They understand that war cannot be won by conventional means alone, that there is a need for a shadow war, a war fought in the darkness, a war of deception and cunning. They create the Phantom Squadron, a unit that operates on the very edge of possibility, a unit that is willing to do the impossible. Their story is a reminder that innovation is essential to success, that the willingness to take risks is often the key to victory, that the ability to adapt and evolve is crucial in a constantly changing world. It is a story about the importance of intelligence, of understanding the enemy, of using information as a weapon. It is a story that is as relevant today as it was in the dark days of World War II. The story of the B-24 Liberator is a story of a transformed machine. It is a heavy bomber designed to carry tons of explosives and rain destruction upon the enemy. But in the hands of the carpetbaggers, it becomes something else. It becomes a lifeline, a symbol of hope, a phantom in the night. It is stripped of its defensive armament, painted ghostly black, and equipped with specialized equipment. It is no longer a weapon of mass destruction. It is a tool of liberation, a silent messenger carrying the seeds of freedom to the occupied lands. Its story is a reminder that the same tools can be used for different purposes, that the power of technology is determined by the intentions of those who wield it. It is a story about the importance of adaptation, of finding new ways to use old tools, of thinking creatively in the face of adversity. It is a story that speaks to the ingenuity and resourcefulness of the human spirit. The story of Vercors Massif is a story of a landscape transformed. It is a rugged, beautiful region, a place of mountains and forests, a place of peace and tranquility. But in the dark days of the war, it becomes a battlefield, a fortress, a symbol of resistance. The mountains provide shelter for the Maquis, a natural defense against the German invaders. The forests become hiding places, a network of secret paths and hidden camps. The very landscape becomes a weapon, a tool in the fight for freedom. Its story is a reminder that the land itself can be a participant in the struggle, that the natural world can provide both sanctuary and strength. It is a story about the deep connection between people and place, about the importance of fighting for the land we love, about the enduring power of the natural world. It is a story that speaks to the timeless bond between humanity and the earth. The story of the night is a story of a realm transformed. The night is traditionally a time of fear, a time of darkness and danger. But for the Phantoms, the night is their ally, their protector, their domain. They embrace the darkness. They become one with it. They use it to their advantage, to move unseen, to strike without warning, to disappear without a trace. They are creatures of the night, ghosts in the machine of war. Their story is a reminder that fear can be overcome, that the things we fear can become our greatest strengths. It is a story about the importance of adaptation, of learning to thrive in hostile environments, of turning disadvantages into advantages. It is a story that speaks to the power of the human mind to conquer fear, to master the unknown, to find courage in the darkest of places. The story of The Secret is a story of a burden carried. The men and women of the Phantom Squadron carry a terrible secret, a secret that they cannot share, a secret that they must take to their graves. They cannot tell their families, their friends, their loved ones. They cannot seek recognition, they cannot seek glory, they cannot seek validation. They must live with the knowledge that their sacrifices will never be acknowledged, that their stories will never be told, that their names will be forgotten. It is a heavy burden, a lonely burden, a burden that only the strongest can bear. Their story is a reminder that true heroism is often silent, that the greatest sacrifices are often made in the shadows, that the most important work is often the work that goes unrecognized. It is a story about the importance of duty, of honor, of the willingness to put the needs of the many before the needs of the few. It is a story that should humble us all, that should remind us that there are those who have given everything and asked for nothing in return. The story of the memory is a story of a legacy preserved. The story of the Phantom Squadron is not just a story about the past, it is a story about the present and the future. It is a story that must be told, that must be remembered, that must be passed down from generation to generation. It is a story that reminds us of the sacrifices that have been made, the courage that has been shown, the hope that has been kept alive. It is a story that inspires us to be better, to do better, to live up to the legacy of those who came before us. The memory is fragile. It is easily lost, easily forgotten, but it is also powerful. It is the foundation of our identity, the source of our values, the guide for our future. We must cherish the memory. We must protect it. We must share it. We must tell the stories of the phantoms, of the men and women who fought in the shadows, who gave everything for a cause they believed in. We must ensure that their sacrifices are not in vain, that their stories are not lost, that their names are not forgotten. And so we come to the end of this story. But it is not truly an end. It is the beginning. It is an invitation to explore the hidden corners of history, to discover the untold stories, to listen to the whispers of the past. It is an invitation to remember the ghosts, to honor their sacrifices, to learn from their courage. It is an invitation to become a part of the story, to carry the memory forward, to ensure that the legacy of the Phantom Squadron lives on. The world is a complex and dangerous place. The threats we face are real and ever-present. But we are not powerless. We have the power to choose, to act, to make a difference. We have the power to stand up for what we believe in, to fight for what is right, to defend the principles of freedom and justice. We have the power to be the ghosts in the machine, to operate in the shadows, to do the work that no one else can or will do. The story of Phantom Squadron is a call to action. It is a call to courage, to sacrifice, to service. It is a call to remember the past, to honor the fallen, to learn from their example. It is a call to be better, to do better, to live up to the legacy of those who came before us. It is a call to be the ghosts, to be phantoms, to be the silent heroes who fight for a better world. The story of Jimmy Thompson is a story of one man, but it is also a story of all of us. It is a story about the potential that lies within each of us, the capacity for courage, the willingness to sacrifice, the determination to make a difference. It is a story that reminds us that we are all capable of extraordinary things, that we all have the power to be heroes, that we all have the responsibility to stand up for what is right. He was a boy who fell from the sky. He was a pilot who lost his crew. He was a soldier who fought in the shadows. He was a ghost who became a legend. He was a phantom, and his story is our story. It is a story of hope, of courage, of the enduring power of the human spirit. It is a story that must be told. It is a story that must be remembered. It is a story that will never die. The echoes of the past reverberate through the present, shaping our understanding of the world and our place within it. The story of the Phantom Squadron is one such echo, a powerful reminder of the sacrifices made by those who came before us and a call to action for those who will come after. It is a story that transcends time and place, speaking to the universal human experiences of courage, loss, and the enduring search for meaning in a chaotic world. In the quiet moments, when the noise of the modern world fades away, we can still hear the whispers of ghosts. We can hear the roar of the engines, the crackle of the radio, the desperate shouts of the men in the cockpit. We can see the Black Liberator, a phantom against the night sky, carrying its precious cargo into the heart of enemy territory. We can feel the fear, the adrenaline, the fierce determination of the men and women who risked everything for a cause they believed in. These are not just stories. They are living memories, etched into the fabric of our collective consciousness. They are the foundation upon which our present is built, the guide for our future. They are the ghosts that haunt us, not with fear, but with inspiration, with a call to be better, to do better, to live up to the legacy of those who came before us. The world has changed dramatically since the dark days of World War II. Technology has advanced, the political landscape has shifted, the nature of warfare has evolved, but the fundamental truths remain the same. The struggle between good and evil, between freedom and tyranny, between hope and despair, these are the eternal conflicts of the human condition. And in every generation, there are those who are called to stand in the breach, to fight the good fight, to be the guardians of freedom. The Phantom Squadron was one such group. They were the silent heroes, the unsung warriors, the ghosts who operated in the shadows. They were the ones who did the impossible, who took on the missions that no one else could or would, who sacrificed everything for a cause greater than themselves. They were the embodiment of courage, of duty, of honor. They were the best of us, and their story is a reminder that we all have the potential to be like them. We all have the capacity for courage, the willingness to sacrifice, the determination to make a difference. We all have the power to stand up for what we believe in, to fight for what is right, to defend the principles of freedom and justice. We all have the responsibility to be the guardians of legacy, to ensure that the sacrifices of the past are not in vain, to carry the torch of freedom forward into the future. The story of the Phantom Squadron is not just a story about war. It is a story about the human spirit, about the capacity for ordinary people to do extraordinary things when faced with the darkest of times. It is a story about the power of hope, the resilience of the soul, the enduring strength of the human heart. It is a story that speaks to the very best of us, that reminds us of what we are capable of, that inspires us to be more than we are. It is a story about the bonds of brotherhood, about the fierce loyalty that binds men and women together in the face of unimaginable danger. It is a story about the importance of trust, of reliance, of the willingness to put your life in the hands of another. It is a story about the deep connections that are forged in the crucible of shared experience, the bonds that endure long after the war is over. It is a story about the power of sacrifice, about the willingness to give everything for a cause greater than oneself. It is a story about the men and women who put the needs of the many before the needs of the few, who gave their lives so that others might live, who made the ultimate sacrifice for the principles they believed in. It is a story that should humble us all, that should remind us of the debt we owe to those who came before us. It is a story about the importance of memory, about the need to remember the past, to honor the fallen, to learn from their example. It is a story about the fragility of memory, about how easily it can be lost, how quickly it can be forgotten. It is a story about the responsibility we all have to preserve the memory, to tell the stories, to ensure that the sacrifices of the past are not in vain. And it is a story about ghosts, the ghosts of the men and women who fought and died in the shadows, whose names are not written in the history books, whose sacrifices are not commemorated with monuments and medals. They are the silent heroes, the unsung warriors, the phantoms who haunt the margins of history. But they are not forgotten, not by those who knew them, not by those who carry their memory, and not by those who are willing to listen to the whispers of the past. The legacy of the Phantom Squadron is a legacy of courage, of sacrifice, of service. It is a legacy that should inspire us all to be better, to do better, to live up to the example of those who came before us. It is a legacy that reminds us that the fight for freedom is never truly over, that the price of liberty is eternal vigilance, that the responsibility to defend our values rests with each one of us. In the end, the story of Phantom Squadron is a story about us. It is a story about our capacity for good, our potential for greatness, our responsibility to make the world a better place. It is a story that challenges us to be more than we are, to rise above our limitations, to embrace the darkness and emerge stronger on the other side. It is a story that reminds us that we are all capable of being heroes, that we all have the power to make a difference, that we all have the responsibility to stand up for what is right. The ghosts are still with us. They are in the wind that whispers through the mountains of Virkos. They are in the silence of the night, the darkness that once sheltered them. They are in the hearts of those who remember, who honor, who carry the torch of freedom forward. They are the silent guardians, the unseen protectors, the phantoms who watch over us still. And if we remember them, if we tell their stories, as long as we honor their sacrifices, they will never truly die. They will live on in the memory of the past, in the actions of the present, and in the hope of the future. They are the Phantom Squadron, and their story is our story. It is a story of courage, of sacrifice, of the enduring power of the human spirit. It is a story that must be told. It is a story that must be remembered. It is a story that will never die. The final chapter of this story is not yet written. It is being written now by each one of us. It is written in the choices we make, the actions we take, the values we uphold. It is being written in the way we live our lives, the way we treat one another, the way we stand up for what we believe in. It is being written in the legacy we leave behind, the impact we have on the world, the difference we make in the lives of others. The Phantom Squadron showed us what is possible. They showed us that ordinary people can do extraordinary things. They showed us that courage is not an absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it. They showed us that sacrifice is not a burden, but a privilege. They showed us that the fight for freedom is worth fighting, that the price of liberty is worth paying, that the legacy of courage is worth preserving. And so we carry their torch forward. We honor their memories. We tell their stories. We live up to their example. We become ghosts, phantoms, the silent heroes who fight for a better world. We stand in the breach. We defend the principles of freedom and justice. We make the impossible choices. We take the risks that no one else is willing to take. We do the work that no one else can or will do. We are the inheritors of their legacy. We are the keepers of their memory. We are the guardians of their sacrifice. We are the Phantom Squadron. And the story continues. The night is still long. The enemy is still out there. The fight is not over. But we are not afraid. We are not alone. We have the courage of those who came before us. We have the strength of their example. We have hope for a better tomorrow. We are the ghosts in the machine. We are phantoms in the darkness. We are silent heroes who will never give up, who will never surrender, who will never stop fighting for what is right. And if there are those who are willing to stand in the breach, as long as there are those who are willing to fight for freedom, if there are those who are willing to honor the memory of the fallen, the story of the Phantom Squadron will live on. It will inspire, it will challenge, it will remind us of what we are capable of. It will be a beacon of hope in the darkness, a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit, a call to action for all who believe in the principles of liberty and justice. The ghosts are still with us. They are watching. They are waiting. They are hoping. They are hoping that we will remember. They are hoping that we will honor their sacrifice. They are hoping that we will carry the torch forward. They are hoping that we will be the phantoms, the silent heroes, the guardians of freedom. And we will not let them down. We will remember. We will honor. We will carry the torch. We will be the phantoms. We will be silent heroes. We will be the guardians of freedom. We will be the Phantom Squadron, and the story will never die. The weight of history presses down upon us, a constant reminder of the struggles and triumphs of those who came before. In the case of the Phantom Squadron, that weight is particularly heavy, laden as it is with the burden of secrecy, the pain of loss, and the quiet pride of a mission accomplished against impossible odds. To understand their story is to understand the very nature of sacrifice, the true meaning of courage, and the enduring power of human will. The men who flew the Black Liberators into the heart of occupied Europe were not supermen. They were not born heroes. They were ordinary men, drawn from every corner of America, from small towns and big cities, from farms and factories. They were mechanics and teachers, students and salesmen, boys who had barely begun to live before they were thrust into the crucible of war. But they were united by a common purpose, a shared belief in the cause they were fighting for, and a fierce determination to do their duty, no matter the cost. They trained hard, pushing themselves to the limits of their physical and mental endurance. They learned to fly in the darkness, to navigate by the stars, to communicate in code. They learned to trust their instruments, to trust their crew, to trust themselves. They learned to live with fear, to manage it, to channel it into a focused, controlled energy. They learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. The training was brutal, unforgiving. Many were washed out, unable to handle the pressure, the demands, the constant threat of failure. But those who made it through, those who earned the right to wear the insignia of the carpetbaggers, were a breed apart. They were the elite, the best of the best, the men who could do the impossible. They were the phantoms. And then came the missions, the long, lonely flights into the darkness, the constant vigilance, the ever-present danger. They flew through flak and fighters, through storms and searchlights, through the very jaws of death itself. They dropped their precious cargo, their agents and supplies, into the waiting arms of the resistance. They were the lifeline, the slender thread of hope that kept the flame of freedom alive in the occupied lands. Each mission was a gamble, a roll of the dice with death. They knew the odds. They knew that many of them would not come back. But they went anyway. They went because it was their duty. They went because they believed in the cause. They went because they were phantoms. And phantoms do not run from the darkness. They embrace it. The losses were staggering. 25 B-24s were lost, 8 more damaged beyond repair. 208 men missing and killed. Each loss was a blow, a wound to the heart of the squadron. Each empty bunk, each silent chair in the mess hall was a reminder of the terrible price of war. But they did not give up. They did not surrender. They mourned their fallen comrades, and then they went back into the sky, back into the darkness, back into the fight. They were sustained by a sense of camaraderie, a bond of brotherhood that transcended the normal boundaries of friendship. They were a family, united by shared danger, shared purpose, shared sacrifice. They looked out for one another. They supported one another. They trusted one another with their lives. They were the Phantom Squadron, and they were brothers in arms. And they were sustained by the knowledge that what they were doing mattered. They were not just dropping supplies. They were delivering hope. They were empowering the resistance, giving them the tools they needed to fight back, to resist occupation, to keep the flame of freedom alive. They were the silent partners in a great struggle, the unseen heroes who made the liberation of Europe possible. The story of the resistance is a story of incredible courage and resilience. The men and women of the Maquis, the partisans, the underground fighters, they were the true heroes of the war. They lived under constant threat of discovery, of betrayal, of torture and death. They had no uniforms, no official recognition, no guarantee of safety. They were hunted like animals, their lives worth nothing to the occupiers. But they fought on, driven by a fierce love of their country, a burning hatred of tyranny, and an unshakable belief in the ultimate triumph of freedom. They sabotaged railways and bridges, they ambushed German patrols, they gathered intelligence, they sheltered downed Allied airmen. They were the eyes and ears of the Allied forces, providing vital information about German troop movements, fortifications, and plans. They were the thorn in the side of the occupation, a constant, irritating reminder that the spirit of France had not been broken. And they were sustained by the supplies that came from the sky, the precious cargo dropped by the Black Liberators of the Phantom Squadron. The weapons, the ammunition, the explosives, the radios, these were the tools of their trade, how they could fight back, resist, and ultimately prevail. The carpetbaggers were their lifeline, their connection to the outside world, their proof that they were not alone, that the Allies had not forgotten them. The relationship between the carpetbaggers and the resistance was a symbiotic one, a partnership forged in the fires of war. The airmen risked their lives to deliver the supplies, and the resistance risked their lives to receive them, to distribute them, to use them in the fight against the occupiers. They were two sides of the same coin, two parts of the same struggle, two groups of ordinary people doing extraordinary things in the face of unimaginable adversity. The story of the drop zones is a story of precision and danger. The drop zones were small, often just a few hundred meters across, hidden in remote valleys, on isolated plateaus, in the depths of dense forests. They were marked by small fires, arranged in a specific pattern, a signal that it was safe to drop. But the signal could be a trap, a deception by the Germans, who were constantly trying to infiltrate the resistance, to capture the agents, to seize the supplies. The airmen had to be certain that they were dropping to the right people in the right place. They used a combination of electronic navigation, visual confirmation, and radio communication to verify the identity of the resistance fighters on the ground. They spoke coded phrases, exchanged prearranged signals, and listened to the distinctive sound of the Eureka transponder. It was a complex, delicate dance, a high-stakes game of cat and mouse, where a single mistake could mean the difference between life and death. And even when they were certain that they were dropping to the right people, the danger was not over. The drop itself was a perilous maneuver, requiring the pilot to fly low and slow, making the aircraft a perfect target for anti-aircraft fire. The cargo had to be pushed out at precisely the right moment, with the parachutes deploying correctly, the containers landing safely. And then, the aircraft had to climb quickly to escape the range of the guns, to disappear back into the darkness. It was a feat of incredible skill and nerve, a testament to the training and professionalism of the carpetbagger crews. They were the masters of the night, the ghosts of the sky, the silent deliverers of hope. They were the Phantom Squadron. The story of the agents, the Joes, is a story of extraordinary courage and sacrifice. These were the men and women who volunteered to be dropped behind enemy lines, to live and work in the shadows, to gather intelligence, to organize the resistance, to sabotage the enemy's war effort. They were spies, saboteurs, organizers, and leaders. They were the human cargo of the Phantom Squadron, the precious packages that had to be delivered safely, no matter the cost. They came from all walks of life, from all corners of the Allied world. They were French, British, American, Polish, Czech. They were soldiers, civilians, professionals, amateurs, but they were all united by a common purpose, a shared belief in the cause, and a willingness to risk everything for freedom. They were the bravest of the brave, the most selfless of the selfless. They were the true ghosts of the war. They underwent rigorous training, learning the arts of espionage, sabotage, and survival. They learned to blend in, to disappear, to become invisible. They learned to speak the language, to adopt mannerisms, to live the life of the people they were trying to help. They learned to kill, to lie, to deceive. They learned to live with constant fear, constant danger, constant uncertainty. They learned that their lives were expendable, that their missions were more important than their own survival. And then they were dropped. They tumbled through the Joe hole, the gaping opening in the belly of the B-24, into the cold, dark night. They fell through the air, their parachutes blossoming above them, their hearts pounding in their chests. They landed in enemy territory, alone, vulnerable, with only their wits and their training to protect them. They were ghosts, and they had to become phantoms. Many of them were captured, tortured, and killed. The Gestapo was relentless in its pursuit of Allied agents, using every means at its disposal to track them down, to break them, to extract information from them. The agents knew the risks. They knew that capture meant almost certain death. But they went anyway. They went because it was their duty. They went because they believed in the cause. They went because they were heroes. And those who survived, those who managed to evade capture, to complete their missions, to make it back to Allied lines, they carried with them the scars of their experiences, the memories of the horrors they had witnessed, the weight of the secrets they had kept. They were forever changed by their time in the shadows, forever marked by the war. They were ghosts, and they would remain ghosts for the rest of their lives. The story of technology is a story of innovation and adaptation. The carpetbaggers used a variety of specialized equipment to carry out their missions, from the Rebecca and Eureka navigation systems to the S-phone radio to the modified B-24 Liberators themselves. Each piece of equipment was designed to give them an edge, to help them survive, to enable them to complete their missions. The Rebecca was a directional air-ground device that allowed the navigator to home in on the signal from the Eureka transponder on the ground. It was a crucial piece of equipment, enabling the airmen to find the drop zones in the darkness, even in the most remote and isolated locations. But it was not foolproof. The signal could be weak, distorted by terrain or weather, and the Germans were constantly trying to jam the signal, to interfere with the navigation, to lead the aircraft astray. The S-phone was a special two-way radio that allowed the airmen to communicate directly with the resistance fighters on the ground. It was a short-range device, almost impossible to intercept, providing a secure channel for exchanging information, verifying identities, and coordinating the drop. It was a vital link in the chain, a lifeline that connected the airmen in the sky with the fighters on the ground. And the B-24 Liberator itself was transformed. It was stripped of its ball turret, replaced by the Joe hole, the opening through which the agents and supplies were dropped. It was painted glossy black, the best color for evading searchlights. It was equipped with special blisters for the pilot and co-pilot's windows, providing greater visibility. And the waist guns were replaced with blackout curtains, reducing the aircraft's visibility and weight. It was no longer a bomber. It was a phantom, a ghost ship of the night. Technology was constantly evolving, constantly being improved, constantly being adapted to meet the changing demands of the war. The carpetbaggers were at the forefront of this innovation, testing new equipment, developing new techniques, pushing the boundaries of what was possible. They were the pioneers of covert air operations, the trailblazers who paved the way for the modern special operations forces. The story of the weather is a story of a constant adversary. The weather over occupied Europe was notoriously unpredictable, with frequent storms, heavy cloud cover, and poor visibility. The carpetbaggers often flew in conditions that were considered impossible for flying, pushing themselves and their aircraft to the limits of their capabilities. They flew through thunderstorms, through ice and snow, through fog so thick that they could barely see the wingtips of their own aircraft. The weather was a constant threat, a source of danger and uncertainty. It could obscure the drop zones, making it impossible to find the resistance fighters on the ground. It could ice up the wings, causing the aircraft to lose altitude, to stall, to crash. It could create turbulence so severe that it could tear the aircraft apart. It was a relentless, unforgiving enemy, and it claimed many lives. But the carpetbaggers learned to live with the weather, to respect it, to adapt to it. They learned to read the clouds, to anticipate the storms, to find the gaps in the weather where they could safely fly. They learned to trust their instruments, to fly blind when necessary, to navigate by dead reckoning when the stars were hidden. They learned that the weather was not just an obstacle, but also an ally, providing cover from the enemy, obscuring their movements, making them even more difficult to detect. The story of the enemy is a story of a formidable foe. The Germans were a highly skilled and well-equipped adversary with a sophisticated air defense network, experienced night fighter pilots, and a ruthless intelligence service. They were constantly trying to intercept the carpetbagger flights, to shoot down the Black Liberators, to capture the agents and supplies. They were a constant, menacing presence, a shadow that lurked in the darkness, waiting to strike. The German night fighters were particularly dangerous. They were equipped with radar, enabling them to detect the Allied aircraft in the darkness. They were fast, maneuverable, and heavily armed, capable of inflicting devastating damage. The carpetbagger crew had to be constantly vigilant, constantly scanning the sky for any sign of the enemy. They had to be ready to take evasive action at a moment's notice, to throw their heavy bombers into violent maneuvers, to do whatever it took to survive. The German flak batteries were another constant threat. They were positioned along the coast, around major cities, and near strategic targets. They fired a deadly barrage of anti-aircraft shells, creating a curtain of fire that the aircraft had to fly through. The shells exploded in the air, sending shrapnel in all directions, tearing through the thin aluminum skin of the aircraft, wounding and killing the crew. It was a terrifying experience, a gauntlet that had to be run on every mission. And the Gestapo was a constant, insidious threat. They were the secret police, the enforcers of the Nazi regime, the hunters of spies and saboteurs. They were ruthless, efficient, and utterly without mercy. They infiltrated the resistance, they tortured prisoners, they executed anyone suspected of aiding the Allies. They were the embodiment of evil, the face of tyranny, the enemy that the carpetbaggers and the resistance were fighting against. But despite the formidable nature of the enemy, the carpetbaggers and the resistance prevailed. They outsmarted the Germans, they outfought them, they outlasted them. They used their courage, their cunning, their determination, and their unwavering belief in the cause to overcome the odds, to achieve the impossible, to win the war. They were the ghosts, the phantoms, the silent heroes who made the difference. The story of the aftermath is a story of silence and secrecy. After the war, the carpetbaggers were disbanded, their records sealed, their stories classified. The men who had flown the Black Liberators into the heart of occupied Europe were told to forget what they had done, to never speak of their missions, to take their secrets to their graves. It was the price of the shadow war, the cost of operating in the darkness. Many of them struggled with the silence. They had experienced things that few others could understand. They had seen things that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. They had lost friends. They had witnessed horror movies. They had made sacrifices that would never be acknowledged. They carried the weight of their experiences alone, unable to share them with their families, their friends, or even their fellow veterans. But they honored the code of silence. They kept the secrets. They did not seek recognition. They did not seek glory. They did not seek validation. They simply went on with their lives, carrying the memories of their service in the quiet corners of their hearts. They were ghosts, and they remained ghosts, even in peacetime. It was only decades later, as the classified files began to be declassified, as the stories began to emerge, that the world began to learn about the Phantom Squadron, about the incredible courage and sacrifice of the carpetbaggers. And even then, the full story was never told. Many of the details remain classified to this day. Many of the names remain unknown. Many of the missions remain shrouded in mystery. The ghosts are still with us, their secrets still hidden in the shadows. But the legacy of the Phantom Squadron lives on. It lives in the memories of those who knew them, in the stories that are told, in the lessons that are taught. It lives on in the values they embodied, the courage they displayed, the sacrifices they made. It lives on in the freedom we enjoy today, the freedom that they fought and died to protect. It lives on in the hearts of all who believe in the principles of liberty and justice, who are willing to stand up for what is right, who are willing to be the ghosts in the machine. The story of the Phantom Squadron is a story that transcends time and place. It is a story about the universal human experiences of courage, loss, and the enduring search for meaning in a chaotic world. It is a story that speaks to the very best of us, that reminds us of what we are capable of, that inspires us to be more than we are. It is a story that must be told, that must be remembered, that must be passed down from generation to generation. It is a story about the power of the individual to make a difference, about the capacity of ordinary people to do extraordinary things. It is a story about the importance of standing up for what you believe in, even when it is difficult, even when it is dangerous, even when it seems impossible. It is a story about the enduring power of the human spirit, about the resilience of the soul, about the unbreakable will to survive, to resist, to overcome. It is a story about the bonds of brotherhood, about the fierce loyalty that binds men and women together in the face of unimaginable danger. It is a story about the importance of trust, of reliance, of the willingness to put your life in the hands of another. It is a story about the deep connections that are forged in the crucible of shared experience, the bonds that endure long after the war is over. It is a story about the power of sacrifice, about the willingness to give everything for a cause greater than oneself. It is a story about the men and women who put the needs of the many before the needs of the few, who gave their lives so that others might live, who made the ultimate sacrifice for the principles they believed in. It is a story that should humble us all, that should remind us of the debt we owe to those who came before us. And it is a story about ghosts, the ghosts of the men and women who fought and died in the shadows, whose names are not written in the history books, whose sacrifices are not commemorated with monuments and medals. They are the silent heroes, the unsung warriors, the phantoms who haunt the margins of history. But they are not forgotten, not by those who knew them, not by those who carry their memory, and not by those who are willing to listen to the whispers of the past. The Phantom Squadron was a unique unit, a product of a specific time and place. But the principles they embodied, the values they fought for, the sacrifices they made, these are timeless. They are as relevant today as they were in the dark days of World War II. They are a reminder that the fight for freedom is never truly over, that the price of liberty is eternal vigilance, that the responsibility to defend our values rests with each one of us. We live in a world that is still filled with conflict, with injustice, with tyranny. There are still those who seek to oppress, to dominate, to control. There are still those who deny the fundamental rights and freedoms of others. There are still those who believe that might make right, that the ends justify the means, that the individual is expendable in the pursuit of power. And so the need for ghosts, for phantoms, for silent heroes, that need has never been greater. We need men and women who are willing to stand in the breach, to fight the good fight, to defend the principles of liberty and justice. We need men and women who are willing to operate in the shadows, to take on the missions that no one else can or will, to sacrifice everything for a cause greater than themselves. We need men and women who are willing to be the guardians of freedom, the protectors of the innocent, the defenders of the oppressed. The story of Phantom Squadron is a call to action. It is a call to courage, to sacrifice, to service. It is a call to remember the past, to honor the fallen, to learn from their example. It is a call to be better, to do better, to live up to the legacy of those who came before us. It is a call to be ghosts, to be the phantoms, to be the silent heroes who fight for a better world. And it is a call to never forget the sacrifices that have been made, the courage that has been shown, the hope that has been kept alive. To never forget the men and women who gave everything for a cause they believed in, who fought and died in the shadows, who were the silent heroes of the war. To never forget the Phantom Squadron. Their story is our story. Their legacy is our legacy. Their sacrifice is our responsibility. We must honor them. We must remember them. We must carry the torch forward. We must be ghosts, the phantoms, the silent heroes. We must stand in the breach. We must defend the principles of freedom and justice. We must make the impossible choices. We must take the risks that no one else is willing to take. We must do the work that no one else can or will do. We are the inheritors of their legacy. We are the keepers of their memory. We are the guardians of their sacrifice. We are the Phantom Squadron. And the story continues. The night is still long. The enemy is still out there. The fight is not over. But we are not afraid. We are not alone. We have the courage of those who came before us. We have the strength of their example. We have hopes of a better tomorrow. We are the ghosts in the machine. We are phantoms in the darkness. We are silent heroes who will never give up, who will never surrender, who will never stop fighting for what is right. And as long as there are those who are willing to stand in the breach, if there are those who are willing to fight for freedom, As long as there are those who are willing to honor the memory of the fallen, the story of the Phantom Squadron will live on. The human cost of the Phantom Squadron's operations cannot be measured in statistics alone. Behind every number, every casualty report, every missing in action telegram, there was a human being. A son, a brother, a husband, a father, a man with dreams and aspirations, with hopes and fears, with a life that was cut short in the service of a greater cause. Each loss was a tragedy, a wound that never fully healed, a void that could never be filled. Consider the families left behind, the mothers who waited by the window, watching for a son who would never return, the wives who slept alone, clutching a photograph, praying for a miracle that would never come. The children who grew up without fathers, who never knew the man who gave his life so that they might live in freedom. The siblings who lost their best friends, their confidants, their partners in crime. The communities that mourned their fallen heroes, that honored their sacrifice, that vowed never to forget. The pain of loss is a universal human experience, but the pain of losing someone in war is particularly acute. There is no closure, no final goodbye, nobody to bury. There is only uncertainty, only the terrible, gnawing fear that the loved ones suffered, that they died alone, that they were afraid. There is only the empty chair at the dinner table, the silent room, the photographs that fade with time, but the memories that remain vivid, painful, and achingly real. For the families of the Phantom Squadron, the pain was compounded by the secrecy. They could not talk about what their loved ones had done. They could not share their grief with others who might understand. They could not seek comfort in the knowledge that their sacrifice was recognized, that their heroism was celebrated, that their names would be remembered. They had to carry their burden alone, in silence, in the shadows, just as their loved ones had carried their burden in the skies over occupied Europe. But they did not forget. They kept the memories alive. They cherished the photographs. They told the stories to their children and grandchildren. They honored sacrifice in their own quiet way, in the privacy of their homes, in the depths of their hearts. They were the keepers of the flame, the guardians of the memory, the silent partners in the legacy of the Phantom Squadron. And as the years passed, as the classified files began to be declassified, as the stories began to emerge, they finally received some measure of recognition, some acknowledgement of the sacrifice that had been made. It was not enough. It could never have been enough, but it was something. It was a validation of their grief, a confirmation of their pride, a recognition that their loved ones had not died in vain. The psychological toll on the survivors was equally profound. The men who flew the missions, who witnessed the horrors of war, who lost their friends and comrades, they carried the scars of their experiences for the rest of their lives. They suffered from what we now call post-traumatic stress disorder, a condition that was not well understood at the time, a condition that was often dismissed as weakness or cowardice. They had nightmares, flashbacks, panic attacks. They struggled with depression, anxiety, and survivor's guilt. They turned to alcohol, to drugs, to anything that could numb the pain, that could silence the voices, that could make the memories go away. They isolated themselves. They withdrew from their families. They pushed away the people who loved them. They were haunted by the ghosts of the past, by the faces of the men they had lost, by the terrible things they had seen and done. But many of them also found a way to heal, to cope, to move forward. They found solace in the company of other veterans, in the shared understanding of those who had been through the same experiences. They found purpose in their work, in their families, in their communities. They found meaning in the knowledge that their sacrifice had made a difference, that their service had contributed to the liberation of Europe, that their courage had helped to defeat tyranny. They learned to live with the memories, to accept them as a part of who they were. They learned to honor the fallen by living their lives to the fullest, by making the most of the second chance they had been given. They learned that the best way to remember the ghosts was not to be haunted by them, but to be inspired by them, to carry their legacy forward, to live in a way that would make them proud. The story of the Phantom Squadron is also a story of technological innovation and adaptation. The carpetbaggers were pioneers in the field of covert air operations, developing new techniques, testing new equipment, and pushing the boundaries of what was possible. Their innovations laid the groundwork for the modern Special Operations Forces, the elite units that operate in the shadows, that take on the missions that no one else can or will. The use of electronic navigation systems, such as the Rebecca and Eureka, was a significant advancement. These systems allowed the aircraft to find the drop zones in the darkness, even in the most remote and isolated locations. They were not perfect. They were subject to interference and jamming, but they were a vast improvement over the traditional methods of navigation, which relied on visual landmarks and dead reckoning. The development of secure communication systems, such as the S-phone, was another crucial innovation. These systems allowed the airmen to communicate directly with the resistance fighters on the ground, to verify their identities, to coordinate the drop, to exchange information. They were essential for ensuring the safety of the missions, for preventing the aircraft from falling into traps, for delivering the supplies to the right people. The modification of the B-24 Liberator, the removal of the ball turret, the installation of the Joe hole, the addition of the special blisters, the painting of the aircraft in glossy black, these were all examples of adaptation and innovation. The carpetbaggers took a standard bomber and transformed it into a specialized tool for covert operations, a phantom that could operate in the darkness, that could deliver its cargo and disappear without a trace. And the development of new tactics, such as low-level flying, evasive maneuvering, and the use of weather as cover, these were all examples of the ingenuity and resourcefulness of the carpetbagger crew. They learned to adapt to the changing conditions, to exploit the weaknesses of the enemy, to use every advantage they could find. They were the masters of the night, the ghosts of the sky, the silent deliverers of hope. The legacy of the Phantom Squadron extends far beyond the immediate impact of their missions. Their innovations in covert air operations, their tactics, their techniques, their equipment, these have all been adopted and refined by the modern Special Operations Forces. The men and women who fly the helicopters and transport aircraft that deliver the special forces to their targets, who provide air support for covert operations, who conduct clandestine missions in hostile territory, they are the inheritors of the legacy of the Phantom Squadron. The principles that guided the carpetbaggers, the emphasis on secrecy, on precision, on courage, on sacrifice, these are the same principles that guide the modern Special Operations Forces. They are the silent professionals, the quiet warriors, the ghosts who operate in the shadows. They are the ones who do the impossible, who take on the missions that no one else can or will, who sacrifice everything for a cause greater than themselves. They are the phantoms of the modern era. The story of the Phantom Squadron is also a story of international cooperation and collaboration. The carpetbaggers worked closely with the British Special Operations Executive, the French Resistance, the Norwegian Underground, the Danish Resistance, and a host of other allied organizations. They were part of a vast, interconnected network of spies, saboteurs, and resistance fighters, all working towards a common goal: the liberation of Europe from Nazi tyranny. This cooperation was not always easy. There were cultural differences, language barriers, conflicting priorities, and mutual suspicions. But they overcame these obstacles. They learned to trust one another. They worked together for a common purpose. They understood that the war could not be won by any one nation alone, that it required a collective effort, a shared sacrifice, a unified commitment to the cause of freedom. The relationship between the carpetbaggers and the French resistance was particularly close. The airmen risked their lives to deliver the supplies that the resistance needed to fight back, to resist the occupation, to keep the flame of freedom alive. And the resistance risked their lives to receive the supplies, to distribute them, to use them in the fight against the occupiers. They were partners, allies, brothers in arms. And when the airmen were shot down, when they were forced to bail out over enemy territory, it was the resistance who sheltered them, who fed them, who guided them back to Allied lines. They risked everything to save the men who had risked everything to help them. It was a bond forged in the fires of war, a bond that endured long after the war was over. The story of the Phantom Squadron is a reminder of the importance of international cooperation, of the power of collective action, of the strength that comes from unity. It is a reminder that the challenges we face today, whether they are terrorism, climate change, or economic inequality, these challenges cannot be solved by any one nation alone. They require a collective effort, a shared sacrifice, and a unified commitment to the common good. The ethical dimensions of the Phantom Squadron's operations are complex and multifaceted. They operated in a morally gray area, where the traditional rules of war did not always apply, where the lines between right and wrong were blurred, where the ends sometimes justified the means. They dropped agents behind enemy lines, knowing that many of them would be captured, tortured, and killed. They supplied weapons to resistance fighters, knowing that those weapons would be used to kill, to maim, to destroy. They bombed targets in occupied territory, knowing that innocent civilians might be caught in the crossfire. These were difficult choices, morally ambiguous decisions that weighed heavily on the consciences of the men who made them. They were not taken lightly. They were made with a full understanding of the consequences, with a deep sense of responsibility, with a firm belief that they were doing the right thing, even if the right thing was sometimes terrible. The justification for these actions was the greater good, the goal of defeating Nazi tyranny and liberating Europe. The Nazis were an existential threat, a regime that was committing genocide, that was enslaving millions, that was threatening the very foundations of civilization. To defeat them, to stop them, to prevent them from achieving their goals, that required extraordinary measures, unconventional tactics, and a willingness to operate in the shadows. But the ethical questions remain. Was it right to sacrifice the lives of the agents, the Joes, who were dropped behind enemy lines? Was it right to supply weapons to the resistance, knowing that they would be used to kill? Was it right to bomb targets in occupied territory, knowing that innocent civilians might be killed? These are questions that have no easy answers, questions that continue to be debated by historians, ethicists, and military strategists. The story of the Phantom Squadron does not provide definitive answers to these questions, but it does provide a framework for thinking about them, for grappling with the moral complexities of war, for understanding the difficult choices that must sometimes be made in the pursuit of a just cause. It is a reminder that war is not a simple matter of good versus evil, that it is a complex, messy, and often morally ambiguous endeavor. It is a reminder that the men and women who fight in wars are not always heroes, that they sometimes make mistakes, that they sometimes do terrible things. But it is also a reminder that they are human beings, that they are capable of great courage and great sacrifice, that they are worthy of our respect and our gratitude. The story of the Phantom Squadron is ultimately a story about the human condition. It is a story about our capacity for both great good and great evil, about our ability to endure suffering and overcome adversity, about our willingness to sacrifice for a cause greater than ourselves. It is a story about the bonds of brotherhood, the power of hope, the resilience of the human spirit. It is a story that speaks to the very best of us, that reminds us of what we are capable of, that inspires us to be more than we are. It is a story that should be told, that should be remembered, that should be passed down from generation to generation. It is a story that is as relevant today as it was in the dark days of World War II. It is a story that reminds us that the fight for freedom is never truly over, that the price of liberty is eternal vigilance, that the responsibility to defend our values rests with each one of us. The ghosts of the Phantom Squadron are still with us. They are in the wind that whispers through the mountains of Verkos. They are in the silence of the night, the darkness that once sheltered them. They are in the hearts of those who remember, who honor, who carry the torch of freedom forward. They are the silent guardians, the unseen protectors, the phantoms who watch over us still. And if we remember them, if we tell their stories, if we honor their sacrifices, they will never truly die. They will live on in the memory of the past, in the actions of the present, and in the hope of the future. They are the Phantom Squadron, and their story is our story. It is a story of courage, of sacrifice, of the enduring power of the human spirit. It is a story that must be told. It is a story that must be remembered. It is a story that will never die. In the quiet moments, when the noise of the modern world fades away, we can still hear the whispers of ghosts. We can hear the roar of the engines, the crackle of the radio, the desperate shouts of the men in the cockpit. We can see the Black Liberator, a phantom against the night sky, carrying its precious cargo into the heart of enemy territory. We can feel the fear, the adrenaline, the fierce determination of the men and women who risked everything for a cause they believed in. These are not just stories, they are living memories, etched into the fabric of our collective consciousness. They are the foundation upon which our present is built, the guide for our future. They are the ghosts that haunt us, not with fear, but with inspiration, with a call to be better, to do better, to live up to the legacy of those who came before us. The final words of this story are not an ending, but a beginning. They are an invitation to explore the hidden corners of history, to discover the untold stories, to listen to the whispers of the past. They are an invitation to remember the ghosts, to honor their sacrifices, to learn from their courage. They are an invitation to become a part of the story, to carry the memory forward, to ensure that the legacy of the Phantom Squadron lives on. The world is a complex and dangerous place. The threats we face are real and ever-present, but we are not powerless. We have the power to choose, to act, to make a difference. We have the power to stand up for what we believe in, to fight for what is right, to defend the principles of freedom and justice. We have the power to be the ghosts in the machine, to operate in the shadows, to do the work that no one else can or will do. The story of Phantom Squadron is a call to action. It is a call to courage, to sacrifice, to service. It is a call to remember the past, to honor the fallen, to learn from their example. It is a call to be better, to do better, to live up to the legacy of those who came before us. It is a call to be ghosts, to be phantoms, to be the silent heroes who fight for a better world. If this story has awakened something in you, if it has resonated with the truth in your own heart, then our journey together has just begun. Subscribe to this channel. Join us as we continue to explore the hidden corners of history, the untold stories of the men and women who shaped our world. For the past is never truly past. It is a living, breathing thing, a collection of whispers and echoes, waiting for those who are willing to listen. And we are listening. We are the keepers of ghosts, and we have so many more stories to tell. The Phantom Squadron lives on, not just in the history books, not just in the memories of those who knew them, but in the hearts of all who believe in the principles of liberty and justice, who are willing to stand up for what is right, who are willing to be the ghosts in the machine. They are the silent heroes, the unsung warriors, the phantoms who haunt the margins of history. But they are not forgotten. They will never be forgotten. Their story is our story. Their legacy is our legacy. Their sacrifice is our responsibility. We will remember. We will honor. We will carry the torch forward. We are the Phantom Squadron, and the story continues. The echoes of war reverberate through time, shaping not only the lives of those who fought, but also the generations that followed. The children of the Phantom Squadron, those who grew up in the shadow of their father's service, inherited a legacy that was both a source of pride and a burden of silence. They knew that their fathers had done something important, something dangerous, something that could not be spoken of. They saw the distant look in their father's eyes, the nightmares that woke them in the night, the reluctance to talk about the war. They understood, even as children, that their fathers carried a weight that they could not share. As they grew older, as they began to understand the world and the history that had shaped it, they began to piece together the fragments of the story. They listened to the whispered conversations, they read between the lines of official histories, they searched for clues in the old photographs and the faded letters. They became the detectives of their own family history, the seekers of truth in a world of secrets. And when the classified files finally began to be declassified, when the stories finally began to emerge, they experienced a profound sense of validation. They learned that their fathers had not been ordinary soldiers. They had been heroes, members of an elite unit that had conducted some of the most dangerous and important missions of the war. They had been the Phantom Squadron, the ghosts who had operated in the shadows, the silent heroes who had helped to liberate Europe. This knowledge brought a sense of closure, a sense of understanding, a sense of pride. But it also brought a renewed sense of responsibility. They became the keepers of the flame, the guardians of the memory, the ones who would ensure that the story of the Phantom Squadron would not be forgotten. They wrote books, they gave lectures, they established museums and memorials. They dedicated their lives to honoring the legacy of their fathers, to ensuring that their sacrifices would be remembered, that their stories would be told. The grandchildren and great-grandchildren of the Phantom Squadron, those who never knew the men who flew the Black Liberators, they too have inherited the legacy. They have grown up with the stories, the photographs, the artifacts. They have visited the memorials, they have attended the reunions, they have listened to the veterans sharing their experiences. They have been touched by history, inspired by courage, humbled by sacrifice, and they have taken up the torch. They have become the new generation of keepers, the ones who will carry the memory forward into the future. They use the tools of the modern age, the internet, social media, digital archives, to share the stories, to reach a wider audience, to ensure that the legacy of the Phantom Squadron will endure. They are the bridge between the past and the future, the link that connects the ghosts of the war with the generations yet to come. The impact of the Phantom Squadron extended far beyond the immediate military objectives. Their missions had a profound psychological impact on the occupied populations of Europe. The sight of the Black Liberators, the sound of their engines in the night, the arrival of the supplies and the agents, these were tangible signs that the Allies had not forgotten them, that help was on the way, that liberation was possible. The supplies themselves, the weapons, the ammunition, the explosives, the radios, these were the tools that enabled the resistance to fight back, to resist the occupation, to keep the flame of freedom alive. But they were also symbols of hope, tangible proof that the Allies were committed to their liberation, that they were not alone in their struggle. And the agents, the Joes, who were dropped behind enemy lines, were the human face of the Allied commitment. They lived among the people, they shared their hardships, they risked their lives to help them. They were the proof that the Allies cared, that they were willing to sacrifice for their freedom, that they were not just fighting a war, but fighting for a cause. The psychological impact of these missions cannot be overstated. They gave the people hope, they gave them courage, they gave them the will to resist. They reminded them that they had not forgotten, that they were not alone, that liberation was coming. They were the lifeline that kept the spirit of resistance alive, the spark that ignited the flame of freedom. The strategic impact of the Phantom Squadron was equally significant. The supplies they delivered enabled the resistance to conduct sabotage operations that disrupted German supply lines, damaged infrastructure, and diverted resources away from the front lines. The intelligence they gathered provided the Allies with vital information about German troop movements, fortifications, and plans. The agents they dropped organized the resistance, coordinated their activities, and prepared them for the Allied invasion. All these activities contributed to the success of the D-Day landings and the subsequent liberation of Europe. The resistance, armed and organized by the Phantom Squadron, played a crucial role in disrupting German communications, sabotaging transportation networks, and harassing German forces. They tied down German troops that could have been used to reinforce the defenses at Normandy. They provided intelligence that helped the Allies to plan their operations and avoid German traps. They were silent partners in the liberation, the unsung heroes who made the victory possible. The story of the Phantom Squadron is a testament to the power of unconventional warfare, the importance of covert operations, and the value of working with local resistance movements. It is a lesson that has been learned and relearned by military strategists throughout history, a lesson that is as relevant today as it was in the dark days of World War II. The modern world faces a different set of challenges, but the principles remain the same. The fight against terrorism, the struggle against oppression, the defense of freedom, these all require a combination of conventional and unconventional tactics, a willingness to operate in the shadows, and a commitment to working with local partners. The legacy of the Phantom Squadron lives on in the modern Special Operations Forces, the elite units that conduct covert missions, that work with local resistance movements, that fight the wars that cannot be fought in the open. The story of Phantom Squadron is also a story about the power of storytelling. For decades, the story was suppressed, classified, hidden from the public. The men who flew the missions were told to forget what they had done, to never speak of their experiences, to take their secrets to their graves. But the story could not be suppressed forever. It was too important, too powerful, too inspiring. It demanded to be told. And when the story finally began to emerge, when the classified files were declassified, when the veterans began to speak, it had a profound impact. It inspired a new generation. It honored the fallen. It reminded the world of the sacrifices that had been made. It became a part of the collective memory, a part of the cultural heritage, a part of the story of the war. The power of storytelling lies in its ability to connect us to the past, to help us understand the present, and to inspire us for the future. The story of the Phantom Squadron does all of these things. It connects us to the men and women who fought in the shadows. It helps us understand the sacrifices that were made, and it inspires us to be better, to do better, to live up to their legacy. The story is told in books, in documentaries, in museums, and in memorials. It is told by the veterans themselves, by their children and grandchildren, by historians and researchers. It is told in classrooms, in lecture halls, in living rooms. It is a story that is passed down from generation to generation, a story that is kept alive by the power of memory, the power of storytelling, the power of the human spirit. And the story continues to evolve. New information is discovered, new perspectives are shared, new interpretations are offered. The story is not static, it is not fixed, it is not complete. It is a living, breathing thing, a work in progress, a conversation that continues across the generations. The lessons of the Phantom Squadron are timeless. They speak to the importance of courage, of sacrifice, of service. They speak about the power of teamwork, of collaboration, of trust. They speak about the value of innovation, adaptation, of thinking outside the box. They speak to the necessity of operating in the shadows, of taking risks, of doing the impossible. These lessons are as relevant today as they were in the dark days of World War II. We live in a world that is still filled with conflict, with injustice, with tyranny. We face threats that are complex, multifaceted, and ever-evolving. We need men and women who are willing to stand in the breach, to fight the good fight, to defend the principles of freedom and justice. We need men and women who are willing to be the ghosts, the phantoms, the silent heroes. We need men and women who are willing to operate in the shadows, to take on the missions that no one else can or will, to sacrifice everything for a cause greater than themselves. We need men and women who are willing to be the guardians of freedom, the protectors of the innocent, the defenders of the oppressed. The story of Phantom Squadron is a call to action. It is a call to courage, to sacrifice, to service. It is a call to remember the past, to honor the fallen, to learn from their example. It is a call to be better, to do better, to live up to the legacy of those who came before us. It is a call to be ghosts, to be the phantoms, to be the silent heroes who fight for a better world. The final legacy of the Phantom Squadron is not just the missions they flew, the supplies they delivered, or the agents they dropped. It is the spirit they embodied, the values they fought for, the sacrifices they made. It is the legacy of courage in the face of fear, of hope in the face of despair, of determination in the face of adversity. It is the legacy of ordinary people doing extraordinary things, of individuals making a difference, of the power of the human spirit to overcome any obstacle. This legacy lives on in the hearts of all who remember, who honor, who carry the torch forward. It lives on in the men and women who serve in the military, who put their lives on the line to defend our freedom. It lives on in the first responders, who run towards danger when others run away. It lives on in the teachers, who inspire the next generation. It lives on in the volunteers, who give their time and energy to help others. It lives on in all of us, in the choices we make, the actions we take, the values we uphold. The Phantom Squadron showed us what is possible. They showed us that we are capable of more than we think, that we can overcome any obstacle, that we can make a difference. They showed us that the fight for freedom is worth fighting, that the price of liberty is worth paying, that the legacy of courage is worth preserving. And so we remember, we honor, we carry the torch forward. We are the inheritors of their legacy. We are the keepers of their memory. We are the guardians of their sacrifice. We are the Phantom Squadron. And the story continues. The night is still long. The enemy is still out there. The fight is not over. But we are not afraid. We are not alone. We have the courage of those who came before us. We have the strength of their example. We have hopes of a better tomorrow. We are the ghosts in the machine. We are phantoms in the darkness. We are silent heroes who will never give up, who will never surrender, who will never stop fighting for what is right. And as long as there are those who are willing to stand in the breach, if there are those who are willing to fight for freedom, as long as there are those who are willing to honor the memory of the fallen, the story of the Phantom Squadron will live on. It will inspire, it will challenge, it will remind us of what we are capable of. It will be a beacon of hope in the darkness, a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit, a call to action for all who believe in the principles of liberty and justice. The ghosts are still with us. They are watching. They are waiting. They are hoping. They are hoping that we will remember. They are hoping that we will honor their sacrifice. They are hoping that we will carry the torch forward. They are hoping that we will be the phantoms, the silent heroes, the guardians of freedom. And we will not let them down. We will remember. We will honor. We will carry the torch. We will be the phantoms. We will be silent heroes. We will be the guardians of freedom. We are the Phantom Squadron, and the story will never die.